Hi folks, Josh Knight the First here with another episode of Writer Rebuild, coming to you with episode 48 of the series. Let's get right into it. So this week on Kamen Rider Build, we are at the penultimate episode. We have one episode to go before the end of the series, and we are in this final fight. We are going to see more sacrifices, more things laid on the line here, and we're wondering if it's all going to be worth it, because people are still dying hand over foot, and we might see Evil succeed. Probably not, because this is a children's TV show about superheroes, but still, there is a threat. Now, to go ahead and start off with, at the end of last week's episode, we do know that yes, we lost Kazumi. He gave his life as Grease Blizzard to go ahead and make sure that the heroes do have that extra lost bottle that they need to go ahead and get their plan to succeed. Now, of course, this all depends on whether or not they can get all 10 bottles from the black panel over to the white panel, combine them, and then of course get that out into space however they need to get it there, and combine that with Evil's energy. Now, this is going to take a lot to take place, and there's quite a bit standing in front of them in the form of Evil. Now, over the course of these fights, Evil does say that he is growing himself since he now has access to human emotion, and he is very much enjoying what he's doing right now, that he's been waiting 10 years for this, and he can finally savor victory because it is so close within his grasp. And this really is him as a villain coming into fruition, as this whole time he's had everything planned out to a T. He's known exactly what he was going to do, anticipated everybody's move, positioned people like chess pieces, and now he's finally getting to reap the benefits of that. So yeah, it would make sense there are some things that he might not see because he's a little bit foolhardy, but at the same time, we're lucky that the heroes had one or two aces up their sleeve. Now, last week, of course, the focus was on Kazumi and his sacrifice. This week, the focus is actually going to be on Gentoku and his sacrifice in trying to contribute to the effort to defeat Evil. Now, his whole motivation for the episode is another of redemption. He's trying to do things not only to make up for things that he's done in the past as Rogue, as a bad guy, and also working under Evil, whether he knew it or not, but also to make good for the memory of his father, who we all know fell at Evil's hand several episodes back. Really, this idea of him living up to his father's expectations makes sense for him as a character. That's the extent of his arc, because this whole time he's been relating to that father-son relationship in that, oh, well, I want to do right by my dad, but I kind of want to do it my own way. And that, of course, got distorted by the effects of the light from Pandora's box, but eventually he did see his way back to wanting to do things the right way and honor his father's memory. But right now he feels very guilty, and at this point, he doesn't have as much to feel guilty about, because it's revealed to us that there was a conversation between him and Kazumi where Kazumi told him, look, I think you're the right man for this job. I forgive you for everything you've done. And mind you, that's not any small feat to say. Kazumi had a lot to hold against Gentoku, especially for everything that went on with the Hokuto trio and one of them falling directly at his hands. One, that's big of Kazumi to let that happen, but two, for Gentoku to actually accept that would be even bigger of his character. But I don't think he actually does accept it. I think at the end of the day, he has survivor's guilt just as much as anybody else, or just the guilt of having that blood on his hands. So here, he knows that there's got to be something that he can contribute. There's got to be something that balances out the scales here, and really, that costs his life. The one thing that he knows he can do is try and take out the Evil trigger in order to halt Evil long enough for the other people who have more power to do what they can. And it's very clear early on in the episode that, much like Kazumi, he is going to vanish. But the cool thing about it is we're shown that not only is the focus on him, he does have that kind of hero's redemption, because we see that during the fight, he gets that face crack. And if you know anything about Tokusatsu, only the cool characters, and I know that's kind of an oversimplification, but the cool characters always get the face crack where you can actually see the actor inside the suit. I always appreciate it when a series does that, whether it be in other writer series like Kamen Rider Decade or Geki Ranger, where the helmet cracks and you can see the actor inside there. It adds that extra level of realism, and it actually ties you more to the emotion that the character's feeling, because you can plainly see it on their face. Now, unfortunately, before the helmet break happens, we see that Evil is gaining more and more power, even to the point of sucking up the freaking moon. He's using the moon as energy against our heroes, and here he's really trying to make endgame happen right now. And unfortunately, it's just not enough for Gentoku to fully take him out. We know this. Yes, we know his hazard level is rising to the occasion, but it's not enough. Really, the focus still has to be on Ryuga and Sento. And eventually, when he does vanish, he's still not entirely sure of himself. He's still thinking, did I do right by my father? Asking if he lived up to his example. In my opinion, the fact that he's even questioning this at all shows that he has grown as a character, and that he is worthy of the title title of Kamen Rider, especially because of the motivation that pushes him over to make those last hits against Evil and get that last Rider kick in. It's actually very reminiscent of an older Rider series, Kamen Rider Stronger. For those of you that aren't familiar with the series, he had a catchphrase that he would say right before going into battle. He would say that the heavens cry out, the earth calls, the people cry for me to defeat evil. That's exactly what's actually happening here in this last episode, or this second to last episode, where we actually hear the crowd around Pandora's Tower crying out for the Riders to win, and that's what's giving them the motivation. The heavens are literally crying out because we see them getting sucked into the black hole. The earth is crying out because it's getting sucked into the black hole. The people are crying out because they're getting sucked into the black hole, and they're crying out for them to defeat evil. I'm very much appreciative when you see that kind of throwback and that kind of reference to an older Rider series, especially when that gets to the heart of what makes a Kamen Rider, a heart of justice. And all of our heroes, at least the 4 that we've seen here, and maybe sort of Utsumi, are sharing that heart of justice. And with that, we see Gentoku fade out. Rogue has fallen on the field, which now leaves it up to Sento and Ryuga. And they do manage to do what they need to. They manage to combine the panels and start the reaction, but they still have to get Evil into the reaction to finish it off. Unfortunately, Sento doesn't see that Ryuga has plans of his own and that he wants to be the person to sacrifice himself. Now on paper, it does make sense, and Katsuragi does kind of mention this later on, that it does make sense because Ryuga still shares DNA with Evil, that they both should be the ones to be sacrificed and therefore take all of that threat off of the table. But at the same time, we're seeing something about the relationship between Sento and Ryuga here, because Ryuga is very different from what we saw in episode 1. He's very thankful. He understands everything that Sento has done for him up to this point in the series, and it means something to him. He wants to protect the guy who was protecting him. And the thing of it is, Ryuga's not doing this begrudgingly. He wanted to do this. This was premeditated. He knew that he wanted to make this sacrifice, not just for the sake of the people he cares about, but specifically for Sento, because he owes a debt of gratitude to him. And that shows his growth as a character as well. If there's something I'm very proud of this series, is that we see the growth of these characters, seeing how they grow as people, and they're not just two-dimensional cutouts from a comic book. And with that in mind, we see Ryuga take Evil and blast him into that light, that projected light that's happening between the two worlds, and that's where the episode ends off, which will take us into our final episode for this last bit of build, where we will see just how the fight finishes and if Sento's calculations were correct after all. So overall in this episode, again, I've been saying it and I will continue to say it, I very much appreciate the characters in this show, not just the situation that they're in, although I do have to appreciate the fact that several Rider series, I haven't exactly felt the threat to the world or the fate of humanity. I absolutely buy it here in this series. There have been some other ones where it's kind of like, yeah, but does this really affect everybody? No, here it affects everybody. The earth is getting sucked into a black hole, people are dying left and right, and we don't know exactly how they're going to get out of this, which means it's all on Sento now. There's nobody else left to do this. Now for what it's worth, I do think it was an interesting choice that in order to keep the reaction going, there was one thing Sento wasn't counting on, and that it sucked up all of the power out of the Genius Bottle. So I think it's very weird and very risky to go ahead and take away a Rider's final form there in the final episode. I think that's a very risky move, and I actually applaud them for doing that. Now will he eventually get Genius back? Who knows? I know there's going to be extra movies that were just recently announced, and we're going to see that coming out, and I don't think this is the last we've seen of the Build crew, at least as far as Ryuga and Sento are concerned, but only time will tell. But of course, those are my thoughts. I want to hear what you guys thought in the comments below, so let's go ahead and talk about a few things. First off, Gentoku. Do you think that in his sacrifice that he did redeem himself as a character? Secondly, Sento's plan. If Ryuga hadn't stepped in to be the one to take Evil into the light, what exactly was Sento's plan to do if that hadn't happened? And thirdly, considering the threat to the world as it exists in the series right now, what's another Rider series where you as the audience actually bought the threat that humanity was in danger? You tell me in the comments below. And of course, during the week, you can always talk to me over on social media. On Twitter, I'm at JoshKnight1st. This has been episode 48 of Rider Rebuild for episode 48 of Kamen Rider Build to a world of love and peace. I'm Josh Knight the First. I'll see you guys again for the final episode.